You know, I served in the Reagan administration in the White House counsel's office, and of course there was no better fighter of communism than the president. He was the first, as you know, world leader to call communism an evil empire. Our next speaker is a person who understands communism very well, Ambassador Paula Dobrynski. He needs no introduction. She is a former Undersecretary of State for Democracy and Global Affairs and served as a Senior Vice President and Director of the Washington office of the Council of Foreign Relations. She currently serves as a Senior VP and head of the Governmental Affairs Agency for the Affairs for the America at the Thomson Reuters organization. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Paula Dobrynski.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors who are here with us today, thank you so much. It is really indeed a privilege and honor to be here to mark the 4th anniversary of the dedication of the Victims of Communism Memorial. I especially want to commend Lee Edwards, the chairman of the Memorial Foundation, who worked with my father, Lev Dobrynski, Ambassador Lev Dobrynski, for many, many years on this very, very important effort. I know that my father, a fierce anti-communist and champion of freedom and democracy, if he were here today, he'd be incredibly proud indeed. But I'm heartened by the fact that I know that his memory is preserved in the legacy that we honor here today. I also want to recognize Annette Lantos, my dear friend, and also remember back to the unveiling of the memorial when your husband was here and gave such a passionate and poignant speech that was most memorable, and as was always the case, not with a note in sight. And we really miss him and really appreciate your dedication. The dedication of this memorial coincided with the anniversary of President Reagan's unequivocal demand for the communists to tear down the Berlin Wall. President Reagan believed firmly that, quote, "Freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit," unquote. Well, 23 years ago, as we know, the people of Central and Eastern Europe carried forward the call for freedom that swept the continent. They risked their lives to liberate their nations from tyranny and brutality. Hundreds of thousands died in the process, but their bravery was met with the triumph of democracy. And we know that across the globe, there are many, many others. And I look across this audience and thinking of so many different parts of the world where there are those who also have put their own lives on the line in Asia, Latin America, and elsewhere. We know that the forces of tyranny continue to plague the citizens of the world today. Totalitarianism, dictatorship, and communism comprise the God-given rights of individuals around the globe. Communism alone has victimized more than 100 million men, women, and children. Many have lost their lives, while others have been deprived to those very basic fundamental freedoms and rights to which they are entitled. This memorial, the Goddess of Democracy, first erected by students in Tiananmen Square, reminds us of the persistence of this struggle. And I also see Harry Wu here today, and welcome to you. It was dedicated to ensure that the crimes of the 20th century were never repeated, that the horrors of the Cold War will never be forgotten. So as we reflect on this difficult history, we commemorate the sacrifices made by those individuals who fought for their rights and very dignity. We recognize the courage and the determination they have inspired. And as we celebrate the progress the world has made in the years that have followed, we are also reminded that nonviolent democratic transition is possible, and we've seen it time and again. Pluralism, free media, rule of law, respect for human rights can replace and prevent the abuse of power. The path to liberty is long, but it is a path that has, in fact, been paved. As Annette Lanto said, and I want to repeat, President Reagan famously said, quote, "It is the march of freedom and democracy which we will leave communism on the ash heap of history, as it has left other tyrannies which stifle the freedom and muzzle the self-expression of the people." So as we gather here today, we look very much forward to a future that will leave the forces of evil in our wake, and we renew our commitment to support the struggle for freedom, democracy, and self-determination around the globe. Again, I'm very honored to be here today, and I know that my father, Ambassador Lev Dobryansky, I know he is here with us. Thank you so much.
On NATO enlargement in Budapest, when Hungary was getting ready to join NATO, and Tom Lantos was the first congressman to volunteer to come over and be a keynote speaker. And this beautiful statue that we see here today, the goddess of democracy, was done by the very talented sculptor who is here today with
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and distinguished guests. It is truly an honor to be at this podium. As a sculptor, one gets used to being in the background, a spectator of one's own works. I feel unworthy to stand here. Among you are heroes, real heroes, those who have bravely faced the brutality of communism as prisoners or as grieving family members. As was said here in ceremonies past, there are many more victims of communism than the 100 million killed. And 100 million killed is a mind-boggling number. When more than a decade ago, Dr. Lee Edwards and Ann Edwards had the dream to build this memorial, they recognized that one image had become a universal symbol in the struggle to end communism and promote democracy, the statue from Tiananmen Square. They contacted me to become the designer and sculptor of this memorial because I had led the project to rebuild the Goddess of Democracy as a public sculpture in San Francisco, and because the National Endowment for Democracy had used my small versions of this statue for their annual Democracy Award. And thank you, Mr. Carl Gershman. This leads to the true artistic origin of the Victims of Communism Memorial. The students at Beijing's Central Academy of Fine Art. Their statue was crushed by a tank on June 4th, 1989. After that act was broadcast by Chinese television, a number of freedom-loving sculptors from around the world independently set to work to recreate versions of the statue. So much for the communists destroying the statue. Why did I devote years to this statue? It was commitment to the principle of liberty, and it was personal. Two of my dear friends from China, who between them spent 14 years as political prisoners, one of those friends who spent a year and a half in solitary confinement told me, in America, prisoners are lucky. They know how long they will be in prison. In China, we never knew. Thank you.